There is a strange moment that happens when someone wants you more than they are willing to admit. They do not suddenly become affectionate. They do not confess everything they feel. Sometimes, they do the opposite. They become harder to read, more controlled, more distant, almost indifferent. And that is what makes it so easy to misunderstand what is happening. You assume their distance means their feelings are disappearing, when sometimes their distance is the place where those feelings are being contained. Because the person who feels nothing has nothing to control. The person who feels too much often does. You may have experienced this with someone who seemed perfectly calm around you, yet somehow became different whenever you were close. Their attention would sharpen without them realizing it. They would notice small changes in you that other people overlooked. They remembered things you had forgotten telling them. They could act completely unaffected by your presence, but somehow knew when your energy changed, when you became quieter, when your attention moved somewhere else. None of these things looked like desire on the surface because desire is not always expressed through pursuit. Sometimes it appears through heightened awareness. That is one of the most misunderstood parts of attraction. When someone secretly wants you, their mind starts treating you as significant before their behavior is ready to admit it. You become something they monitor internally. They notice where you are in a room. They notice who you seem comfortable around. They notice when you are unusually distant. They may never consciously tell themselves, "I am watching this person," because that would force them to confront what they are feeling. Instead, their attention keeps returning to you for reasons they cannot completely explain. And then something even stranger happens. They begin creating small opportunities for closeness while pretending those opportunities mean nothing. They find reasons to remain near you longer than necessary. Conversations stretch beyond their natural ending. They become unusually interested in what you think. They ask questions that seem casual but reveal that they have been paying attention for much longer than you realized. The important part is not any single behavior. It is the pattern beneath all of them. Their attention keeps moving toward you even when their conscious behavior is trying to move away. But hidden desire does not always make someone warmer. Sometimes it makes them more guarded. This is where people become confused. You expect attraction to make someone more open, but strong attraction can threaten the emotional control a person has built around themselves. Suddenly, another person matters enough to affect their mood, their confidence, their sense of control. That can feel dangerous. So instead of moving closer, they create distance. Instead of revealing interest, they become deliberately neutral. Instead of letting themselves enjoy the connection, they start analyzing it. They turn an emotional experience into something they believe they can manage. You might remember moments when their behavior seemed almost contradictory. They would be deeply engaged with you, then suddenly pull back. They would seem curious, then become restrained. They would make you feel unusually noticed, then behave as though nothing important had happened. You may have spent hours trying to decide which version was real. The painful possibility is that both were real. The person who moved toward you was responding to what they felt. The person who pulled away was responding to the fact that they felt it. That contradiction is often the emotional fingerprint of someone struggling with their own desire. Because wanting someone creates vulnerability. The moment another person becomes emotionally important, they gain the ability to disappoint you, reject you, change their mind, or simply stop caring. And some people would rather suppress desire than experience the helplessness that comes with needing someone else's response. So they do something psychologically fascinating. They try to reduce the importance of the person they secretly cannot stop thinking about. They tell themselves it is nothing serious. They focus on flaws. They become overly rational. They convince themselves that the attraction is temporary, inconvenient, or beneath their attention. They may even behave as though they are the one who is completely unaffected. But suppression does not erase emotional significance. It often makes the mind return to it repeatedly because the thing being denied remains unresolved. That is why someone can appear distant while still being intensely aware of you. And there is another clue people often miss: their reaction to your emotional absence. When someone is indifferent, your absence does not create much internal disturbance. But when you matter to someone who is trying not to admit it, your absence can expose everything their behavior was hiding. They notice the empty space where your attention used to be. They become more aware of the silence. They wonder whether you have changed. They may not even know why your absence feels different from anyone else's, only that something feels missing. This is where the person who thought they had control can begin losing it. Because attraction becomes harder to suppress when access to the person is no longer guaranteed. When you are always present, the mind can become accustomed to your existence. But when your presence becomes uncertain, the brain begins assigning greater emotional weight to what it might lose. Suddenly, memories become sharper. Ordinary moments become strangely significant. Things that seemed insignificant while they were happening begin replaying with a different meaning. They remember the way you looked at them during a certain conversation. They remember how comfortable silence felt around you. They remember something you said that they pretended not to care about. And the cruel part is that they may realize the importance of these moments only after they no longer have immediate access to them. This is why secret desire can look so different from obvious desire. Obvious desire moves outward. Secret desire often moves inward. It becomes thought, observation, comparison, restraint, curiosity, jealousy, hesitation, and internal conflict. The person may not give you the obvious evidence you were waiting for because their strongest emotional activity is happening somewhere you cannot see. You may have mistaken their composure for indifference. You may have mistaken their hesitation for lack of attraction. You may have mistaken their emotional restraint for emotional absence. And maybe the most painful possibility is that they were fighting themselves while you were trying to understand them. But there is one thing that reveals hidden desire more clearly than almost anything else: emotional inconsistency around you. Not random inconsistency, but a repeated pattern in which their behavior changes depending on how emotionally exposed they feel. When they feel safe, they come closer. When they realize they are becoming attached, they retreat. When they believe you are drifting away, their attention returns. When they feel they have regained control, they become distant again. It creates a cycle that can make you question your own perception. You start wondering whether the connection was ever real. Whether you imagined the intensity. Whether you misunderstood every meaningful moment. But emotional inconsistency does not automatically mean the feelings were fake. Sometimes it means the person experiencing them has never learned how to tolerate what those feelings demand from them. And this is where the title becomes more uncomfortable than romantic. They may secretly want you more than you think, but that does not mean they know how to love you, choose you, or stay close to you. Desire and emotional courage are not the same thing. Someone can want your presence and still run from the vulnerability it creates. They can think about you and still avoid you. They can miss you and still protect their pride. They can feel jealous and still deny caring. They can recognize your value only after losing the emotional comfort of knowing you were there. That is why the most powerful evidence is not whether they once seemed interested. It is whether their behavior repeatedly reveals that your existence affects them in ways they cannot completely control. Because people can lie with words. They can hide behind composure. They can convince themselves that they have moved on. But emotional significance has a way of leaking through. It appears in the attention they cannot explain, the memories they cannot discard, the tension they cannot completely hide, and the strange emotional shift that happens when they realize you are no longer standing exactly where they expected you to be. And perhaps that is why some people only understand what they wanted after they stopped having easy access to it. They thought they were protecting themselves from wanting you. They did not realize they were teaching themselves what it feels like to lose you. And someday, when everything is quiet enough, they may finally understand the thing they spent so much time trying not to understand. The distance was never proof that they felt nothing. It may have been the evidence that feeling something had become too dangerous to admit. The person who seemed least affected may have been carrying the most unresolved emotion. And by the time they are finally honest with themselves about what you meant, you may no longer be the person waiting for an explanation. You may simply be the person they secretly wanted more than they ever allowed themselves to say.